Hello, loves. Today I have compiled quite a few good stories. Let's get started. Story: Scared my parents will never let me leave, and if I can't leave, I can't transition. For context, I am a 16-year-old trans male who is out to his parents but is very unaccepted and deals with daily transphobia. I'm also supposed to be leaving for university in just over a year, so I'm currently in the process of going to open days. This is important. Parents have also been divorced since I was 13 but are generally on good terms. As I've already mentioned, I'm supposed to be visiting uni open days at the moment in preparation for next year when I'll leave, but it's very difficult to get on any. My mom has recently stated that I'm not allowed to book any until my end-of-year exams come through and are good enough to go to uni. I still have plenty of time to turn them around, but it feels as though this is it. It's also worth stating that most open days are in June, and most have had to be booked months ago to get a place. So whilst my friends are looking at the unis they want to go to, I'm stuck waiting until my parents decide whether or not my grades are good enough. I thought that was the end of it, but I finally managed to convince my dad to take me to one, when he said that I'm not allowed to look at any unis that are more than around an hour, and maybe a half, away by car, which is a major issue as we live in a rural area where most of the unis are shit and don't have the course I want to do. It's not very well known. I'm basically limited to one decent uni. The one I visited, it was good, but I definitely still want to see others, but apparently they're too far even though it's only like 2.5 hours, which isn't even that bad considering where we live, and they're willing to drive further than that for my brother's 15 sport matches. I'm desperate to leave because I don't feel safe and my gender dysphoria is slowly getting worse. I think I might have an eating disorder, possible undiagnosed attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, diagnosed autism spectrum disorder, but I think that was school-guided as I can't imagine my parents caring enough to get me the diagnosis. I've started self-harming again, used to minor self-harm through ages 5 to 10-ish. Though that wasn't with the intent of harming myself, it was to help control my anger. They just gave up on me and I only stopped because I was getting bullied for it every day. They don't care about the fact that I've been bullied for the entirety of my time through school either, and my mental health is just worsening every day. I hate myself and my whole life has fallen apart ever since I came out. The moment I turn 18 I need to leave for uni because I can't start to even properly socially transition, only among friends at school, but need parental permission for name/pronoun change in school system, and I daren't try and legally or medically transition until I leave. When I came out as trans, I was basically told that I'm still a girl and that I'd have to prove that I'm trans if I ever want to be accepted. Absolute bullshit. I know this is what it's like when legally/medically transitioning sometimes though. I was forced to answer some questions which were also absolute bullshit, like what are the benefits/risks of being trans, as though it's my decision to have all this fucking gender dysphoria. My parents are also trying to push me towards a local apprenticeship, which would mean I'd still live at home. I don't see myself surviving past 18 if that's what my future holds. I can't live my life as who I really am until I leave. If I start to transition before then I'm scared I'll get thrown out with nowhere to go, and if I can't leave I'm trapped. The uni course I want to do is desperate for jobs as well, so I'd have a good escape once I was done, but I simply need a way out. They also need to know where I am 24/7. That includes tracking me everywhere I go. I'm not even allowed out without a family member. If I literally walk the 5 minutes from the park to either of my parents' houses I need to text them the moment I get back and they'll watch me from their phones. We live in a quiet rural town where the only thing that could happen is me getting hit by a car. Even if I'm literally just leaving the room I have to provide an explanation as to where I'm going. It's slowly killing me and I don't have anywhere to go. Story: Em accuses me of trying to drown the other kid in her home. So this might seem like a BS story, I know, but hear me out. My former foster mother Em decided to take me and the other kid that lives with her to the lake. We get there, get lawn chairs, sunscreen and ice chest all under a tree for shade, and about 15 minutes later we're allowed to get in the water. For those wondering why we had to wait 15 minutes to get in the water is because the sunscreen had to soak into our skin and I burn very easily, so I basically have to wear what a surfer would wear. So I'm swimming around for a few minutes and decided to swim over to the diving boards. The local lake had diving boards in the middle of the lake. And that's when the other kid, OK, decided to try and follow me. A side note, OK doesn't know how to swim, so he was basically staying where he could touch, bouncing towards me trying to follow. Of course I didn't realize he was following me until he started sputtering because he didn't know how to tread water and kept going under. I basically grabbed him and shoved him towards the ladder leading to the diving board so he could catch his breath. And that's when EM waddles into the water to tell me to get my butt to shore, and I'm in big trouble. So I swim most of the way to shore and walk up to where EM is sitting glaring at me and stats laying into me screaming, "You know he can't swim, why did you tell him to follow you?" I didn't tell him to do anything. If you'd been paying attention you would have seen him following me. I didn't notice until I heard him sputtering because he couldn't stay afloat, and then I reacted to get him somewhere he could hold on to something and breathe. Then I guess she realized that he was still hanging onto the ladder where the diving boards were and then demanded that he be brought back to shore. Well, I swam back to the diving boards and told him let me wrap my right arm around him so I could bring him back safely, and I pushed off as hard as I could to get as much momentum as possible so I could paddle with one arm. Thankfully my shoulder did a majority of the work. Funny thing is, when OK was asked why did you listen when OP told you to follow them, he basically said, I followed OP on my own. I was lucky that OP was paying attention and was able to react so quickly and rescue me. Well, EM wasn't too happy when she realized that I saved OK and not what she was accusing me of, and then she was even more pouty because she couldn't punish me. Not to brag about what I did, but a couple of the monitors were saying that I was a hero for how quickly I reacted and responded to the situation. Story: Is this abusive? 21-year-old male here. My parents are generally loving and caring folks who have gone above and beyond and sacrificed a lot to secure a better life for me and my little siblings. Like all parents though, they have their flaws, some of which I deem as abusive but which they vehemently deny. So, Reddit, based of this list, are my parents abusive or not regarding their corporeal punishment for my and my siblings' various misdeeds? My experiences: woken up in the middle of the night by mom and had the living shit beaten out of me in bed after she went through my phone, which I let her borrow because hers wasn't working, and saw me exchanging mild terrorist jokes with my friend on WhatsApp, belted several times by both my folks, such as for talking to two strangers about my personal life due to stranger danger when I was about 10, or getting into arguments with my siblings, smacked in the head by both my folks multiple times for various misdeeds, such as for accidentally miswriting something on a homework report or being unable to tell the time in my preteens, pinched multiple times by both my folks for various misdeeds, such as not wanting to take my shirt off during a family outdoor activity in the spring, or innocently behaving inappropriately as a kid, had a small chair smashed over my head by dad for getting into an argument with my sister for various other misdeeds. I've been kicked, violently shaken like a rag doll, beaten with a wooden spoon, had something thrown at me, forced to kneel on the floor and raise my arms up in the air until told otherwise, made to stay outside the house in the wind wearing a shirt and shorts, and I don't remember who said it exactly, but I think I recall one of my folks threatening that they might not be able to control themselves if they're sufficiently pissed off. I've been threatened with bodily harm countless times. I've received several death threats, even if they weren't serious. If I showed a hint of resistance towards mom's physical discipline by reflexively protecting myself, she'd guilt-trip me by saying, "So the sun strikes back, eh?" Even though I would never and was nowhere to retaliating on mom, only shielding myself. Even at age 21, when I confronted her about her physical discipline, she defended herself by claiming that I only focused on the negatives and never the positives of their parenting, and she doesn't regret anything she ever did to me, and that even if I was age 24, she would still dole out the physical punishment if she wanted to. When I said I won't let her touch me, she once again asked me if this meant I was going to start beating her back. I said I'd never lay a hand on her, nor had I even thought of doing so. It's just that I wouldn't let her touch me, that's it. She asked what if she were to throw a shoe at me, would I throw the shoe back at her, and I said no, I'd just keep a distance from her, and she lost all control and started berating me for being an ungrateful son, etc., before abruptly changing her tune and claiming she was only joking one time. Mom was continually interrupting my conversation with dad over the phone, causing me to tell her in frustration that I'm trying to talk on the phone, but which she misinterpreted as me telling her to shut up or something, resulting in her immediately getting physical with me. Had Dad being angry and yelling at me to stop crying during shower time as he doused me with cold water, which I absolutely hated, but the hot water wasn't working. When I was about 6, after we actually enjoyed a sweaty game of football with some local kids, which soured the experience for me and made me reluctant to play football outside again, since the only way I could play was if I had either of my folks with me. One summer vacation, we were at the beach in the sea, and Dad was trying to take me to the deeper levels despite me being very uncomfortable as I couldn't swim properly yet, resulting in me almost drowning when he left me to it. But Mom saved me another time. Mom was continuously making fun of something I wrote in a book, causing me to smack the book out of her hand in anger, which she beat me for and locked me up in my room. In my later teens, Dad would frequently get me to help him out in incredibly strenuous activities which would often completely physically drain me, both when we were refurbishing our house and building our up-and-coming shop, to the point where the neighboring shopkeepers who saw how tirelessly I worked for him expressed concern by telling him to go a bit easy on me and at least pay me for my efforts, which he addressed by asking me, "Don't they know you're my son?" I never once complained or declined his requests to help out, since I knew we were tight on money and Dad was making use of all the free help he could get. My only issues were some instances of potential abuse, such as when he got angry and started yelling at me to perform a task that I genuinely didn't understand how to do. I remember pleading with him to help me understand, but he continued to get frustrated and scaring the shit out of me. Or this other time where after a hard day's work at building our shop, I didn't immediately acknowledge something Dad said to me, leading him to berate me for my supposed social blunder. When he just wouldn't let up, I then proceeded to remind him of a social blunder he once committed, causing him to punch me in the face and berate me more until we got home. When we arrived home, I was offered dinner, which I declined solely because I was uncomfortable being around him and so wanted to immediately go to bed, but he forced me to sit right next to him and eat while he shot a death glare at me, which I interpreted as him asserting his dominance over me. Dad could be very short-tempered and erratic on occasion, to the point where I would feel like I was walking on eggshells around him at times, such as when I woke up one morning and greeted him with a casual hello that had a bit of a drawl to it, and he suddenly froze up and looked at me with a death glare, and I quickly apologized, scolding me for laying my heavy head back on the sofa while he spoke to me, scolding us if me or my siblings said excuse me if he was in our way in the house, since apparently that was too formal and not something you'd say to a family member, especially a father, or if we forgot to say good morning to him after waking up. I've actually had to appeal to Mom to ask him to control his temper on a couple of occasions, and as a result I feel like I can never truly relax around him on multiple occasions. I've been forced to eat something even if I didn't want to. I had a bedwetting problem for most of my life. One time when I was about 5, Dad woke me up in the middle of the night to discover that I'd once again wet the bed. He angrily told me to get up, told me to face the wall and remain in that position in my piss-stained clothes as punishment while he changed my bed, and made me go back to bed again after he'd changed my clothes. I have noticeable bumps on my foreheads which I remember were obtained from hitting my head on the ground as a toddler, but which Mom claims are just natural or something, which I interpret as gaslighting. Mom accused Dad of cheating on her, but he proved he wasn't. Years later, when I inquired as to what their fight was about, she told me the truth, that it was a misunderstanding over his fidelity, which I suspected was the case back then. When I brought it up again later, however, she totally lied about it for some reason, which I again see as gaslighting. When Mom caught me watching porn for the first time ever at age 12, she berated me by asking whether this also means I would like to see her or my sister naked during some of our more heated arguments. Mom has claimed that I wouldn't care that she died several times despite me having been an incredibly devoted and loving child towards her during my preteens and early teens. When I was a kid, I told Dad I wanted to make cartoons in the future as a career, and he said that that job was for a software engineer. As an adult, I realize now that he was being manipulative. They both had a tendency to downplay my mental health issues, instead advising me to turn myself over to God. Thing is, I no longer believe in God, so that advice was falling on deaf ears, and I am terrified of coming out to them as an atheist because of their fundamentalist beliefs after deceiving my parents for 2 years about my online learning. While it was justified to an extent, Dad really let me have it, telling me in no uncertain terms every opportunity he had how extremely let down he was, how he'd never seen anything like this happen anywhere in his entire life. He was 55 at this point, and how my deception and failure were among the two biggest tragedies/disappointments in his life, the other being the civil war raging in our homeland. Mind you, this civil war resulted in the genocide of thousands upon thousands of our ethnic tribe. He would also say that he's so angry but he can't beat me to let it out because I'm an adult now. I was 20 at the time, so he's forced to stew helplessly in his own anger. My little brother's experiences, non-comprehensive, got the living shit beaten out of him by mom after he was tricked by his friends into writing fuck on a whiteboard. He didn't even know what it meant, but I could hear his pitiful wails and screams coming from the bedroom where mom was beating him. He accidentally tripped and broke a stair pillar while we were organizing the shoe room once, causing mom to lose it and get physical with him. When I brought this up with dad years later, mom either lied about the events or didn't recall it well, the former which I interpret as another round of gaslighting, but regardless, dad was more inclined to believe her than me. During his psychosis, when he had trouble eating or drinking, mom got physical with him by trying to forcefully make him drink some water along with his med, causing it to spill all over his face. He's also been pinched and smacked on the head several times for various misdeeds. He's also been threatened with bodily harm several times. When my sister was 10, some of her friends called her from dad's phone. She asked if she could pick up and he said yes, so she did, but when he asked her to give him the phone, she impulsively hung up. Dad slapped her hard across the face for it. Mom hit her because sis was taking too long to get ready to go on a mandatory walk. Mom got very physical with sis after she found out that sis was getting some remote IT person to help out with fixing an issue on a laptop she was working on. When sis was 12, dad punched her around the back of her head for going to his and mom's room in the morning to look for clothes. When she was 13, dad threatened to gouge out her eyes and cut her legs if she wore mascara. Dad hit her across the face because she sighed during one of his lectures. Dad told her he wasn't abusive as other parents as they go so far as killing their kids, so he's not bad. Dad punched her around the face for sighing during another lecture even though she never did, causing her to cry right before putting on a school performance. Dad beat her legs with a belt until a flap of skin came off and she bled for 5 minutes because she had a tiny bit of mascara on. Dad punched her numerous times in the back of her head because she had plucked her brows and forced mom's hands behind her back and shoved her onto the bed when she tried to intervene. When sis was 9 and late to school as the car was down, dad rode her to school on a bike, but her leg got caught in the wheel as they were going full speed, which almost literally caused her foot to be cut in half. She was in so much pain, but he wouldn't check the wound until her friends at school insisted she get it checked, because she could barely walk. Dad still frequently threatens to beat and throw things at her if angry enough, and she's a young adult. Dad slapped her across the face when she was acting bratty towards him and took her upstairs to slap her up some more. Dad tried to make sis study almost every day of the summer even though she was already a good student attending grammar school. Dad got pissy with her for simply reading literature during her study breaks and disallowed her from doing so. This is not to say it's all been bad. I'm currently 21 and living in the UK, but I was born in East Africa and Dad anticipated that our country would one day blow to hell, which it did, so starting from absolutely nothing, he worked his ass off to move his wife and 3 kids to Italy when I was 7, before finally moving us to the UK when I was 8 while he worked abroad. He worked himself to the bone for torturous hours in several different countries, some war-torn and with civil wars raging all around him, potential death, without seeing his children for months on end for 7 years, all so that they could have a better life than he ever had, where he and his dad suffered the aftermath of a devastating civil war that destroyed their livelihood and lost everything when he was our age. And during those 7 years, Mom single-handedly raised us as a lonely housewife in a totally new and unfamiliar land with virtually no employment while her husband worked abroad trying to make ends meet. She dutifully made us breakfast, lunch, and dinner practically every single day for those 7 years, and I can admit we barely had to do any household chores in our preteens and early teens as she was basically doing everything for us, so you could say we were spoiled to an extent. They would both frequently instigate family time to bond with us kids, and during a lot of these times they would try to instill a strong moral fiber in us due to their Christian background, telling us to do our best to be altruistic and morally upstanding people in all and any situations. Mom never had a problem expressing her love for us and would do her best to emotionally support us if we needed her. Same with Dad. He usually had no problem telling us he loved us and officially quit his job when I was 16 and permanently moved to the UK as he couldn't bear to continue being separated from us any longer, and also so he could start a business in the UK, which he won't get to operate that long anyway since he's in his mid-50s and planned to leave everything in our hands for us to profit from. Both my parents had difficult childhoods and their parents also used corporeal punishment, which is why they think it's okay to use it on me and my siblings since they experienced similar treatment at our age and claimed they turned out okay. My father growing up to be a father of 3 making 6 figures and my mother being a strong-willed woman. Story: finally stood up to my entitled parents and gained my freedom. For as long as I can remember, my parents have controlled every aspect of my life. They demanded perfect grades, picked my friends, and decided what hobbies I could pursue. Nothing I did was ever good enough for them. If I got a 95 on a test, they would ask why it wasn't 100. If I made a new friend, they would scrutinize them until they found a reason to disapprove. After I graduated college, I thought things would change. I landed a decent job and moved into my own apartment, hoping to finally gain some independence. But my parents had other plans. They started showing up unannounced, criticizing my choices, and trying to dictate my career path. They even tried to control who I dated, insisting that no one was good enough for their precious child. The breaking point came when I got a promotion at work. I was over the moon, but my parents were not. Instead of congratulating me, they berated me for not consulting them first and told me the new position was a mistake. They insisted that I should quit and find a job they approved of. I was devastated and furious. How could they not see how hard I had worked and how much this meant to me? I realized then that nothing would ever change unless I took a stand. So, I did something I had never done before. I stood up to them. I told them that I was an adult, capable of making my own decisions, and that their constant interference was no longer welcome. They were shocked and angry, accusing me of being ungrateful and disrespectful. But I didn't back down. I told them that if they couldn't respect my boundaries, they were not welcome in my life. It was the hardest conversation I've ever had, but it was also the most liberating. For the first time, I felt like I was in control of my own life. I stopped answering their calls and messages unless they respected my boundaries. It wasn't easy, and I felt guilty at times, but I knew it was necessary for my own well-being. A few months later, my life had transformed. I was excelling at my job, had made new friends who supported me, and was in a healthy, loving relationship. My parents eventually came around, realizing that they had pushed me too far. They apologized and agreed to respect my boundaries, and our relationship improved significantly. Standing up to my entitled parents was the most challenging thing I've ever done, but it was also the best decision I've ever made. It taught me the importance of self-respect and the power of setting boundaries. Now, I'm living a life that I am proud of, free from their constant criticism and control. Story: couldn't handle living in that home, so I left. I cut off my toxic mother, and this is what she did. For some backstory here, my parents had shared custody of me a couple months ago. I had just gotten back from visiting my grandparents in my hometown. Both my father and stepmother sat me down to have a talk. They said that social services were becoming more concerned over me and my siblings' well-being at my bio mother's home, especially with her just being charged and all. So they asked me, since I had already been thinking about leaving, if I wanted to leave at the end of the next week I would be at her home. I said yes. But it was a very hard decision for me to make. Not because of my mom, but because of my younger half-siblings that lived with her. The time I had spent living in her home created so much trauma for me. Her boyfriend would verbally and emotionally abuse me, as well as blame anything that went wrong on me. I once asked him why he hated me so much, and he said, "Because he looked like your father." My father had done nothing to him. My bio mother and him would also fight all the time. I would have to try to take my siblings out of the room so they wouldn't hear it. They have been together since I was 5 and I am now currently 15 and I believe they are still together. I left that week because I was reaching my breaking point. I hated going there. The week I planned to leave on, I decided to write her a letter telling her why I had left. I wasn't expecting that great of a response, to be honest though, because in the past, when I would try to tell her how I was feeling about anything, she would just brush it to the side. She would get mad at me too for saying how I was feeling and would make anything I said all about her. So here was the letter I left for her. Dear Mother, I had decided to write this letter to you as a type of farewell, at least for now. I'm going to be living at Father's house full-time from now on, and by the time you read this letter I will have already left your home. I know hearing this will probably upset you, and I'm sorry for doing so. But this is all for the best. I don't really know how to put all my feelings into words for you, and I have always had trouble with that. I just want you to know that the reason I myself am leaving is because I don't think you're a bad person, Mother, but I do think that before I can come and start visiting you again, you need to get help. By how things were going, this decision was not just up to me at this point in time. Also, please don't blame Jenna and Father too much. They just honestly want what is best for me and my mental health. To be honest, I have many more things I would like to tell you, but I gave up on that idea a while ago. Every time I would try to share my feelings with you, you would never really listen and sometimes even become angry at me. That's why, if you noticed, I have become more distant towards you. Furthermore, all the lying, saying hurtful things about me, and the excuses. I have become to not trust you. I really wanted to believe that it would never have to come to this again, but Mother, you were the one that decided it did. I hope to be able to see you again once you have gotten the things you need and when I am ready as well. I'll always love you and wish the best for you, even if don't believe so. Farewell, Mother. Hopefully we will be able to meet again someday. I tried to express all these feelings to her and see if she would maybe understand why I decided to leave. But she just responded to me with these messages. Amazing. I do not know how you could give up on a parent and never could do that, and I have had screwed up parents. My mother has a mental illness my whole life, and I would never do to her what you just did to me. My dad is an ass, but I still could never do what you just did to me. Love you, but will never understand your cruel nature. You never got that from me. Then she sent me this the next day: if you want to stay at your father's permanently, that is your choice. It sucks for me as I do love you. I have moved for you and everything else, but it seems I am never good enough. Furthermore, since my father still had to be in contact with her for certain things, I asked him to ask her if they could somehow plan for me to see my siblings, and this is what she said about it. You will need to come and talk to me before I agree to anything. After this message, it was just the same BS over and over. Or saying how she didn't trust me to see my siblings. I mean, it's not like I pretty much raised them myself anyways, right? I haven't heard or seen my siblings in 3 months, and it's really affecting me badly. But today, I was told that I was going to be able to see them next Friday, and I'm so excited and happy. Although, there was a catch. My bio mom has to be there. My father and stepmom and a social worker is going to be there though. I just hope she doesn't still try to ruin my visit with my siblings somehow. Story entitled Mom and Son at the Flea Market. So this happened on Sunday, but I haven't had the time to post this. Thankfully, I wasn't really involved with anything here. As I was a bystander in the story, I decided to go to the flea market to look for old action figures to add to my collection, as there's quite a few booths that sell them. I was looking at the Power Rangers figures at one booth. I'm a huge fan of Power Rangers in Super Sentai, and I bought a blue ranger and a pink ranger. That's when a rather rude mom and her son, he looked to be around 4 to 5-ish, walked in. Her son picked up this huge Transformers figure. I don't know which one it was, as I'm not a Transformers fan, and the only ones I know are Optimus Prime, Bumblebee and Megatron. And well, he wanted it. The mom then found the guy who owns the booth and asked him how much it was. He told her that it was $150. The toy was still in the original box, and it looked pretty old. and well, she wasn't happy about this because it was too expensive, and she asked him if she could have it for $10. The guy told her that she can't buy it for $10 for obvious reasons, and well, she kept arguing and trying to buy it for $10. All this while her son kept whining and crying because he couldn't get the toy. The guy then told her she could buy it for 60. I think he just wanted to get rid of them, and honestly I don't blame him, and well, that's when the mom snapped and yelled at the poor guy, saying that the toys he sold looked bad and that he was rude and that she will never buy anything from him. She then picked up her son and walked off, and I heard the mom say something along the lines of, "Don't worry, mommy will get you a much better one and not a bad one from that mean old guy." When I went to pay for the Power Rangers, I told the guy that I felt really bad for what just happened even though I wasn't involved, and he just laughed and told me that it wasn't the first time he had an encounter with those two. Thankfully, I never saw them again afterwards, as I think they left. Story: A Pool Party and an Entitled Mom. Hello, I remembered this gem from a few years ago and think this will be perfect for this channel. Also, apologies for this being so long, so much happened here that I just remembered. Also, I'm a junior in high school, currently on summer break, about to be a senior. This happened back in 2019 when I was in 6th grade summer break going on to 7th grade. On that day, I was invited to a pool party for my dad's friend's daughter returning from vacation in Mexico with her grandmother. We'll call the daughter ED, entitled daughter. Well, ED was just returning and wanted to go swimming. She just got a pool built in her backyard that looked identical to mine, just hers had a hot tub, ours did not. I expected to just go to EM house, entitled mom, because she lived next door. Turns out the party wasn't at her house. I assumed this meant we would be going to a friend's house in the neighborhood, but no. We all hopped into the car to head to the public pool. I was cool with it. Thankfully, my mom gave me money for food just in case the pool party wasn't at somebody's house. We get to the pool just for EM to expect us to pay for our own bracelets. I'm cool with it due to having my own money, but I was confused. I assumed since she invited us out she was paying for us. I pay for my ticket, but I turn to see my friends. I'll call them Esmeralda and Ashley. Esmeralda is the younger one of the sisters, close to ED age, and the older sister Ashley is about my age. They both didn't bring any money because we thought we were swimming at somebody's house and not a public pool. EM started scolding them and paid, mumbling about how their mom owes them now. Isabella, the youngest there, paid for herself because her family had gave her money. Lastly, ED older cousin by 3 years was paid for only because he's family and his mom was sending money to his aunt when he stayed there. So we finally get in and I'm really hungry and decided I'm going to eat first because I skipped breakfast, I think. I got a lot of food due to my mom giving me $20. From what I remember, I got a hot dog, some chips, ice cream, and slushie. I understand how crazy it was that I ate that, but I had some issues at the time at home. To sum it, because I don't feel like getting too into it, basically to sum it up, I ate whatever I wanted when I wasn't home because my family was controlling over food. I also had health issues that made me eat more plus medication. Anyways, EM looked at me in disgust and said, "You shouldn't eat all that," because she wandered off. I knew what she was trying to say, but she remembered that my dad is friends with her fiancé, and if she said what she was planning to say, it can cause issues. So she remembered something that she thought would work. She said, "Your mom wouldn't be okay with you eating all that." I responded, but I don't recall what it was that I told her. I got into the pool after eating and played in the water for a bit. Every time I lightly splashed, my friend Ashley, or EDM, would get mad and yell at me and Ashley because we were the oldest and should act our age. We were also then expected to watch the little kids and follow them around. Me and Ashley didn't want to, but did so because it got embarrassing being stared at by everyone when EM would yell at us. Me and Ashley barely got to do what we wanted in the pool. Mind you, me and Ashley are in 6th and 7th grade watching a 4th grader, 3rd grader, and a 2nd grader. Instead of enjoying the pool. If me and Ashley knew we were going to be used as unpaid babysitters, we would have stayed home and swam at my house. The kids got out of the pool because they got hungry. So we followed. I also wanted a popsicle because it hit 103 degrees at that time. When we first got to the pool, it was about 95 degrees. side-eyed me and said you don't need any more food because I ate 4 hours ago. We were at this pool for about 9 hours in total. I said I know, but I just want a popsicle. So she allowed me to take my coin purse back and buy one. At first she said I have to give the other kids the rest of my money so they can eat. I lied and said popsicles were $2 and I only have 2 left. Got upset and scolded me, saying I shouldn't have gotten all that food and now the other wouldn't get to eat. I brought my own money and so did Isabella. Pulled out $5 and told them to share, but when Isabella refused the money, saying she had her own, asked how much she had and she said she had $30 or $40, but her mom said it's only for her and to return the rest to her mom. Took back her $5 and said Isabella has to pay for all the kids because she has the most money and her mom would be fine with it. Also, never paid back Isabella's mom. The kids cost her $30. I got a popsicle and I bought the last Sour Patch Kids, which was for my older brother because he was super nice to me that week. I enjoyed 2 popsicles and placed the candy in my bag secretly because I didn't want to let the other kids see the candy. Shamed Jack, Isabella, and Esmeralda for what they got. I shared with Ashley some of my food because we were super close. Was mad that I didn't share with her daughter Ed. We went swimming again afterwards and came back a few hours later to complaining about random stuff then wanting to leave. So we packed up our stuff and Ashley was complaining about hunger to me quietly to not be scolded by for not making Isabella pay for her meal. So I gave her a few Sour Patch Kids because I accidentally opened the box when I grabbed my clothes. I put the box back quietly and then I turned to who was shaming me for buying candy and not sharing with the other kids. She then says, "OP, you need to share with the other kids because you've ate enough for today." When the other kids heard I had candy, they all ran up begging for candy. When I tried to explain to the candy is mainly for my brother, she accused me of lying and said I had to share. The kids ran to my bag and excited for candy and took the candy from my bag and shared it between all the kids. After give the kids handfuls of candy, she gave me and Ashley 3 pieces each for being greedy. The only thing that kept me looking forward to this day was going to pick up ice cream at an ice cream shop. As soon as we got close though, said we don't deserve ice cream and said we will get some at her house. As soon as we get there we got mini otter pops. Ashley declined because she wanted ice cream and went home to get some from her house. Everyone else, shockingly enough, including me, got an otter pop. Only half though, because we didn't deserve a full otter pop, it was also the mini otter pops. I went home disappointed but didn't tell my parents for fear of getting in trouble for the food I ate. Story: I discovered a family secret which allowed me to escape my entitled mom and stepdad's abuse. Hey, so first thing first. My GF recommended that I share this story because this is something that everyone might enjoy. So, I decided that I would post it here, under a throwaway. Mostly because my previous posts on my main would all but make my IRL ID apparent, and because I do not want the artificial boost to my karma. Growing up I had thought that I had good relationship with my parents, mom and dad/stepdad, and my 3 younger siblings, YB1, YS, and YB2. However, around 5th grade my relationship had begun to change. I had always exceeded at school, so my parents sent me to a private school that had really good test scores and students had good placements in colleges later on. However, my last year I was really excited to go on to a private middle school that all of my friends and I had gotten accepted into. Unfortunately, at that time my parents sat me down and explained to me that they did not have the money to pay for my tuition and had to withdraw YB1 and YS's applications to the elementary school that I had gone to for the same reason. So, I would be enrolled in the local public middle school the following year. Towards the end of 5th grade, we were doing science class, and my teacher started our Intro to Genetics unit. That lesson has stayed with me since, because my appearance is so different compared to my parents. As of now I'm in my 20s and I share literally no features with my mom. So, I started to begin asking my teacher some very difficult questions about genetics in class, and after answering which traits tend to be dominant, she realized where I was going and immediately shut me down. Over that summer, I read pretty much every book I could on the subject before I did something dumb. I went to my dad and asked him if I was adopted. This conversation didn't end well. I don't remember everything that was said, but it escalated very quickly and ended with him hitting me. My dad hit me so hard that he actually broke my right cheekbone. My mom rushed me to the hospital, and I was coached saying that I was accidentally hit by a doorknob, which I eventually had to repeat the same thing to CPS. After a week back from the hospital, my mom and dad revealed to me that he was actually my stepdad. When they were in college, my mom was dating a guy who she said was a real asshole. When they found out that she was pregnant, he left her, but my stepdad stepped up and did everything that he could, and they put his name on my birth certificate. My mom then explained that when I confronted my stepdad that it really hurt him and lashed out in anger. It was wrong and they both asked for forgiveness. I unfortunately agreed. We seemed to go back to being a somewhat normal family again, but I began to notice things that I didn't before. Whenever my younger siblings needed something, my mom and stepdad would drop everything to help them. Meanwhile, I was told to figure it out myself. For birthdays, I would get next to no attention, usually just a hug from my mom. I didn't even get a cake after I turned 6. Meanwhile, my siblings would get a party and the works pulled out for them. My stepdad would come back from work and wanted nothing to do with me. Even as a little kid, I was a massive nerd who wanted to go to museums and all those nerdy kid things and had zero interest in sports. My brothers were the exact opposite, and he spent much of his free time playing or watching sports with them. If my brothers wanted to go to see a game or something, my stepdad would move heaven and earth to bring them and usually drag me along. If I wanted to see the new Devonian fossil exhibit at the local museum, then there was no way I could go because he was busy. Once he even told me, "Sorry, but that basketball game took up your entire entertainment budget this month." By the way, that was the same game that when he saw that I brought my copy of Cosmos, he threw it out because I shouldn't have brought a book to a family event. There were several more things my parents did that showed their favoritism when I was younger, but this is already going to be a long post. What I do want to point out is that this wasn't a new behavior that developed after the truth came out. This had been ongoing over the years, and I just chalked it to me being the eldest sibling. Middle school was absolutely hell. I was and still am an introvert who would usually rather be by himself reading than talking to people. In my old school, I was still the odd one out, but I didn't get singled out for it and had friends. At the public school, I was quickly singled out and bullied, which caused my mental health severely declined, and my parents refused to intervene because it would toughen you up. I was bullied, but I fought back and then they became my friends. That's just how guys become friends. Of course, I am sure anyone here can assume correctly that the facility was about as helpful. I did try to fight back once and all it did was got 3 different kids to gang up on me and suspended for 3 days. The only friend that I was able to make was an older kid called Devin. Devin was 3 years older than me, but he actually took sympathy on me and decided to protect me from my bullies. Over the next 3 years, my situation at home quickly began to decline. My younger siblings had picked up on my parents' apathy and my decreased confidence and began to harass me. If they wanted something I had, they took it. They would call me names and would play pranks on me, which when I told my parents told me I needed to lighten up. Needless to say, this did not help my situation. My parents also became extremely harsh on me, and I did get beaten from time to time. Towards the end of my first year of middle school, I came home from the library, and I saw a letter from the middle school that I wanted to go to. I immediately opened. It was a letter declining the application for YB1 and YS. I did not see anything for me, so I went to my parents. They punished me for opening their mail, but when I pushed it, they told me that YB1 and YS did more to deserve going to that middle school. Mind you, at this time, and before I had near perfect grades. When I argued that if they could afford to send YB1 and YS, then I should be able to go, I was beaten for talking back and opening my parents' mail. I will be honest, during this time I did try self-harm. Whenever I did, my situation would briefly improve. I became the center of my parents' world, teachers would intervene to stop the bullying, and even some of the kids at school would begin to be friendly to me. But after a week, things would quickly slide back. The only person who was actually they for me in my life was Devin. One day, during the early part of 8th grade, I broke down and told Devin about my biological father. I had been having thoughts about why he abandoned me when he found out. How it was partially his fault that my life was the way it was. There was a lot else I said, but that was the key part. During my venting session, I revealed that my mom had let my dad's first and last name slip recently, and I knew his name. So, Devin offered help me research my dad. That day Devin and I went to his house and began to essentially cyberstalk him. My bio dad was, still is, a college professor at a research university about 200-ish miles from where we lived. We also found that he was married, and I learned I had another younger sister, and my stepmom was pregnant. That night Devin and I hatched a plan, which we would carry out the following day. I came to school, and as soon as I stepped off the bus, I went the high school student parking lot and got into Devin's car, and we left. We arrived at the university around noon. After parking, Devin immediately went to the student center and asked which office my dad worked at and got directions. We went there and he was gone on lunch. But when he came back about an hour later, he saw us sitting outside his office and asked who we were. I remember asking for his name, and then asking if he knew my mom. When he confirmed both, I told him who I was and that I believed I was his son. I just wanted to say, as chessy as it sounds to me looking back, it is Devin who coached me on that. Bastard probably just watched a bad Hallmark drama or something. I remember that he immediately hugged me warmly and started saying, "Oh my God," over and over. He immediately brought us in his office to talk and cancelled his classes for the day. After that Devin left, and my dad took me home and introduced me to his family. My stepmom was surprised. She knew my dad had a son, but a 13-year-old popping out of nowhere is kind of a surprise. Then they explained what happened. According to my dad, he was dating my mom during their senior year of college, when she told him that she was pregnant. He and my mom were having problems in their relationship, and he suspected that she was cheating on him. He was planning on breaking up with her when she had told him. He honestly suspected that it was an attempt to stay together. So he told her that he would be willing to do a paternity test and co-parent, but that he refused to be in a relationship. Turns out that my mom was cheating on him with my stepdad, and when he had a much more positive response, she cut contact with my dad. When my dad married my stepmom, he told her that he may have had a child, and they decided to look my mom up on Facebook and saw a few pictures of me. Remember how I have no significant features with my mom or stepdad? Turns out I look almost identical to my dad. So, he knew immediately. He had reached out to my mom via FB, but she immediately blocked him. He had considered getting a lawyer but figured it would be all but impossible to get custody or even visitation rights without a paternity test, which my mom and stepdad could have blocked. I told him everything that my mom and stepdad had put me through, even more than what had been said above. When I finished, I was crying, and my stepmom was consoling me. After it was all out, my dad wordlessly stood up, went into the next room and called a lawyer, and then called the police. The police, social services, and CPS all showed up and took me into custody. To summarize everything, I was taken out of my mom's and stepdad's custody and became a temporary ward of the state. A paternity test was taken, and it confirmed everything that my dad told me. Then I was placed into my dad and stepmom's care, and I was given a restraining order until I reached the age of 18. I won't pretend that everything was perfect. Looking back on it, I did cause some strain on my dad's marriage, because he immediately favored me over my half-siblings. My dad and stepmom did recover, and they placed sensible boundaries. I was enrolled in a much better school where I was able to make real friends. I never forgot Devin. We stayed in contact, but due to the distance our contact isn't as consistent as it used to be. We still talk regularly though. Devin is doing well. After high school, he became an underwater welder for an oil company, which apparently pays really well. We have met for drinks and to catch up. I asked him why he protected me. He said he wasn't sure, but for whatever reason, when he saw me getting bullied, it just caused something to snap. He also said that he kind of saw me as someone who needed a big brother figure in his life, and that it was the right thing to do. After high school, I went on to college and I was fairly popular as my confidence had been completely rebuilt. I majored in biology and minored in geology. I am currently a PhD student working in paleontology. I love it. I get to go on university-sponsored digs. Normally they are in the States, but last year I got to go to South Africa and Namibia. My mom and stepdad reached out to me a few months ago to try and get me to help tutor YB2 and YS. YS had dropped out of college a few years ago because it was too difficult for her. Although she wanted to go back and finish her program, and YB2 wants to get into a good college next year but doesn't have to grades and wants help studying for the ACTs. During that conversation, I noticed my heart was beating out of control, and that I was having difficulty breathing. I am certain that it was a panic attack, but I had never had anything like that, so I just hung up on my mom and sat on the couch. The following day, I began to receive a couple of texts from my mom's kids asking for help and blocked all of their numbers. Afterwards, I didn't hear from them until I received a barrage of emails from them on my university email. Essentially, they were apologizing for how they treated me and that they wanted to fix things so we could be a family. Originally, I had decided that I wanted to send an email back telling them that I wanted no further contact and that even hearing from them was casing a traumatic response over a decade later, and that I feel the only reason that they are reaching out is because they want a free tutor. I never sent it. Instead, I decided simply to block them. In April, I went on a dig in Texas and received a call from the police telling they had been called to my apartment because they had been told that someone had broken in. It was YB1 trying to get in contact with me. I told the police that he was not supposed to be there and that I would like trespassing charges pressed. As it was a first offense, he was able to plea bargain it down to 100 hours of community service. I got back home at the end of May, and I haven't heard from them yet. I think that they got the idea and decided to stop contacting me. Regardless, I have a strong relationship with my dad. We have spent a long time building that relationship and make up for lost time. I have a good relationship with my younger half-siblings from my dad and stepmom. I play with them and spend a lot of time with them, but there is a fairly big age gap between us. My stepmom and I are on good terms. I'm not sure how to describe our relationship, but I would say that while she didn't completely replace the role of a mom in my life, she did become a motherly figure. I have no idea if that makes sense, but it is the best way I can phrase it. I am not entirely sure how to end this. There might be something like a message here, but probably not. I really did just feel that I should share my story. Although I have been sitting here and after initially writing this, when I was recalling the abuse I suffered, and started to proofread it, I started to feel extremely anxious. I think that I may have some suppressed trauma and will be looking to get therapy. Story: woman called me a racist little bitch because I didn't let her cut the line for a drink. Hello. My previous job had me working as a food service worker in a bakery. I worked at a certain berry-themed amusement park, and I worked there for about 2 years before quitting a few months back for a job that pays me better. I liked the job for the most part. Most people were cool and I really only encountered difficult people during busy seasons, and my coworkers, with the exception of 2 who hated me, had my during these encounters. We were also right next to the park's security office. The way my location was set up was a little bit weird and specific. It was a bakery with 3 massive display cases separating us as the employees from the customers, 2 registers between the display cases and our soda machine, and a little nook off to the side. In this nook, there were 3 machines, a massive coffee pot, a hot chocolate machine that was just a little broken and always messy despite my best efforts to keep it clean, and a run-down little latte machine. There's a counter right next to this machine where the coffees and stuff would be called out. There was also 2 registers set up outside at this time because it was busy season and this was the most efficient way for us as employees to serve customers. There was almost always 1 or 2 people on the register outside, and this time it was my team lead, basically a mini manager, who really liked me because I trained him. This happened on my last day there. This park has a drink program where anybody with the annual pass could pay an extra $10 or so and redeem a free fountain drink every 15 minutes. People who weren't pass holders also could get the drink program by buying a souvenir bottle for like $30 that they could use throughout the day and reactivate if they came on a different day. A lot of people with this drink program tended to feel like they didn't need to wait in lines for their drink redemption, and it was common for them to walk up to the other side of the counter and ask for their refill, and usually, they were annoyed but never malicious when I or one of my coworkers told them that they unfortunately had to wait in line for drinks, as many people in line were also just getting drinks. Not this lady though, oh no. This lady was out for blood, and she must have sensed that I was in a good mood. It was the last hour and a half of my final shift. I was busy cleaning up a couple of messes that had been made throughout the day by the hot chocolate and latte machines, and was simultaneously talking to my managers and other leads about my plans for the future, about where I pick up my last check, etc., etc. Suddenly, I heard somebody unscrewing the lids off their cups and pushing them towards me. This woman was a little taller than me. I'm 5 feet 3 inches, had sunglasses and a baseball cap on, and didn't look very pleasant. You develop a sixth sense for difficult people when working for theme parks, you see. She had 2 souvenir bottles on the counter and was holding them out to me. I smiled at her and told her, "Oh, I'm sorry, you actually have to wait in line to get refills. I know it's inconvenient, but it's park policy." She scoffed at me and said, "I'm just getting drinks," and I reiterated that she still had to wait in line, adding that even though the line was really long right now, there were other people in it who were also just getting drinks. So she disappears and I assume that she'd gone to wait in the, admittedly pretty long, line. In that time I finished cleaning the machines and returned to helping customers in line with my other coworkers. About 5 minutes pass and this lady comes storming back in, cutting the line again and walking up to the register. She pointed at me and said, "You." It's important to note here that I am mixed race, but look white and am usually perceived as white because TBH, I didn't go outside much at this time and have only recently started getting my darker color back. This woman was black, and most of my coworkers are POC. I'm also autistic with low support needs. I'm just a little awkward and anxious, fidgety, and have trouble making eye contact despite my best efforts, so I'm sure that had something to do with why this lady locked onto me and not my other neurotypical coworkers. She kept yelling at me, saying, "You're a racist little bitch, aren't you? You lied to me because I'm black. I wasted all that time in line and your manager told me that you lied to me. You did this because I'm black, didn't you?" I, as any reasonable person would be, was startled. I had been trained for conflicts like this because I was supposed to be a team lead before management changed, and I was usually the person to deal with customers like her for that exact reason. This was partially why I quit. Regardless, this was my first time being cussed at by a customer in a malicious way. I said, "I'm sorry about that, but I didn't lie to you. I can get you your drinks, though." So, she basically threw her cups at me and said, "I want Coke and Diet Coke." I gave her those, and handed her back the cups one by one, telling her which was which. She promptly scoffed and said, "You didn't put them in the right cups. Are you stupid?" And she pushed the cups back at me. I had enough at that point and asked one of my friends to take over for me as I went to go talk to my lead outside. I went out there and told him about the lady, and he informed me that he did not, in fact, tell her to cut the line. He said that he scanned her drink pass, and told her to just wait for one of us behind the counter to help her, and we'd get to her as soon as possible. I told him about her insults to me, and just like that, boom, she appeared behind me. This woman had followed me outside and started berating me in front of my lead and hundreds of customers, one again calling me a racist little bitch and saying that I hated black people, that I was a lazy piece of shit, that I didn't know how to do my job, and that I had no right to be standing there and doing fuck all when the line was out the door. My lead stood up for me, and I'd finally just told her, "It's my last day. You can't talk to me that way," and walked away. She didn't follow me again, and even though I had kept my cool for the entirety of the interaction, it hit me all at once and I had a small meltdown in the bakery storage room. My coworkers, now friends, were very understanding and let me take my time, and thankfully this woman did not ruin my day. I don't miss that job. Seriously, man, if you're gonna go to a theme park, please be nice to the workers. I can tell you from experience that most parks are single-handedly run by teenagers, and unless it's a big park like the one I currently work at, management is in their early to mid-20s and corporate doesn't care about us. Be nice. Please. Story: man feels entitled to a minor's information. So this happened a while back when I was still a minor on a short flight. I, at the time 16F, was seated from row of the plane in the window seat. I was flying alone to meet my dad, who had already been gone for a while. My dad had kindly booked the seat in the middle seat as blocked so I didn't have to sit next to another person. This man sits in the aisle seat across the row from me, and I politely greet him. I'm not American, and it's rather normal here to make polite and friendly conversation with the people you're sitting next to on flights. So cue some harmless small talk about our destination and what we are there for, etc. This is when things start to get slightly weird. We're now fully boarded and this grown man looks at me and says, "Well, I'm so glad nobody came and sat between us," in a weird tone that made me uncomfortable. I quietly place my laptop under my seat and awkwardly point out that my dad had blocked the seat so that I would not have to sit next to strangers as I am a minor. He attempts to move to the middle seat and I politely tell him not to and that I would prefer my space. Once we've taken off, I resume working on an essay for school and he continues trying to talk to me, getting more and more frustrated as I reply blandly and without much interest. Eventually he asks me if he can have my phone number. I decline, remind him that I am a minor and he is a good 10 years older than me. He starts to ask for my social medias, trying to look over at my phone for them. He's getting angry and asking me what my big deal is. I should just give them to him. I'm attractive and it's a compliment. I look at him and bluntly state that him trying to have romantic relationships with a minor is illegal, and he proceeds to say no, it's not, and he can take care of me and I should just give him one of my social medias so he can date me, etc. I again tell him no, and he's very frustrated in his seat once again, trying to move to the middle one, but I again remind him not to. My final straw is him handing me his phone and telling me to type the name of my school into it so he can find me. Firmly decline again. I've been firm for a good 15-20 minutes of this flight and he still believes he is entitled to knowing my details and I am being rude. I get up and walk to two flight attendants rolling a cart down the aisle, shaking, and tell them what's going on. The male flight attendant goes over and speaks to a captain sitting in the jump seat before he goes and kneels next to the man in the aisle and speaks to him. Though majorly disgruntled, the man stops talking to me, but not without dirty looks. Last bit of my flight I spend with my headphones in securely and writing an essay. The kicker? This man had been bragging about the fact that he was an engineer who was returning from winning Engineering Team of the Year. And his boss? Sitting 2 seats away watching this entire encounter. What in the world? Anyway, men are not entitled to women and their details, especially not minors. Sadly, men in this country tend to treat women with great disrespect and very little care for their autonomy and consent. Story: entitled customer threw a fit in attempt to get her way. This happened over a year ago, and this was my worst experience with an entitled customer during my time in retail. Other than that, I've dealt with many people who'd get combative over misunderstandings. I haven't worked in retail for almost a year. In March of 2023, at the retail chain I used to work at, there was a data breach that happened on a corporate level, so the POS system was not allowing returns and exchanges, certain cards couldn't be used in purchases, and employees couldn't clock in and out. This problem lasted for about a month, and was an issue for every store nationwide. Naturally, customers voiced their frustration towards and unfortunately, it was out of our control, so we'd offer discounts and we extended the return date. When this problem was fairly new, an older woman came in trying to return an item, so me and another manager explained to her that the return system was down and that we didn't know when the issue would be fixed. She started getting combative, saying she needs to make the return today as she came in a taxi, and she wasn't understanding that this is an issue beyond our control after stating that this is a nationwide issue. She kept saying, "Why didn't you tell me I can't return this?" And my manager was explaining how she's not intentionally denying her service, and reiterating how this was out of our control. The woman came up to me and continued making a fuss, and I was trying to calm her down, saying, "I understand your frustration," and she kept saying, "No. You don't understand." Every time I'd attempt to explain the situation and that we weren't purposely trying to screw her over. It got to a point where my manager had to call up another manager to explain the deal, as this woman would not let up. She was still throwing a fit in hopes that she'd get her way, even though we already explained that we literally can't process a return due to the issue being out of our control. While waiting on the other manager to come up, the manager I was with pulled her aside to show her other sizes of the item she was trying to return, and that helped her calm down a bit. But when the other manager came up, she was not chill anymore, as she was still not getting that the POS system having issues was out of our control and wanted a firm date on when to come back, even though we literally didn't know when the issue would be resolved. Eventually, the other manager who got called up just told her to come back exactly 30 days from the date of purchase so she'd stop throwing a fit and being combative. That made her stop. Another thing to note is that the first manager saw that she had car keys in her purse, so we kind of figure she made up that bit for sympathy. Naturally, a lot of customers were frustrated about returns and exchanges being down, and we all had customers direct their frustration at us, but for the others it was not to the extent of this woman, as she was refusing to understand the situation and thought that throwing a fit would get her way in this scenario by wearing us down. Story: How a broken bone revealed how entitled my ex-friend was. This took place around 9 years ago. I only remember the timeline because it was the year my youngest nephew was born. I became friends with this girl, M, around the time my job had finished rebuilding for a long overdue renovation. When the store reopened, that was when we met and became friends. We were friends for maybe roughly a year, if not a little longer than that. Some of my family that met her didn't really like her from the get-go. Though, I was blind to it, as I try to see the good in people, as sad as that is. But, over time I had started to notice a few things. Such as when she had broken her arm, she couldn't do some things due to the kind of cast that she had, which wasn't waterproof, so it made it hard for her to do dishes. So, I had offered to help with her dishes. Though the day I was supposed to come over, I was called into work and I needed the money. So, I thought that she'd be asleep still, so I'd go over after my shift, so I went to work and didn't call. Now, I started, and still think I should have said something, and I felt bad. But what made it worse was that after that, Am bitched and moaned about it to coworkers all day. It had started to cause stress in me to build up, as well as guilt, and 2 of my cousins came in that day. We're about the same age, so we get along. They asked me how I'm doing, and they noticed how quiet I was. When they saw that, they asked if I was okay. I had just shrugged, and they knew something was wrong. Asked again, and that was when I broke down in tears. Pulled me aside and asked me what happened, and I had told them everything. They said that it was a jerk thing to even keep bringing it up to work of my friend. When she saw I was in tears, she apologized and said that she knows I couldn't stay mad at her long, or something along those lines. I don't remember it. After that, I thought that maybe things were okay again, though it seemed that it wasn't as I had thought. Another thing, she was dating my best friend from high school. Well, my best guy friend. One day, he and I ran into each other and chatted for a bit. Jay let me know that he was going to break up with her. Didn't go into detail about why, and just wanted to give me a heads up. He also asked me not to say anything to her, which I agreed, as it wasn't my place anyway to say anything to her like that. So, I had kept it to myself and didn't say anything that would indicate that they were going to last or not last, if that makes sense. Well, he didn't do it right away because of circumstances, such as her grandparent passing away. As my friend didn't want to do anything that would only worsen her pain. So, in September, video called me and she was just downright in tears. I don't recall everything that was said, or what she said before I ended up saying this. I kind of knew that Jay was going to break up with you for a while. Moment I said that, she glared at me and hung up. I felt guilt over that and gave her space for the time being. After that, I went to bed as it was late at night, and I was exhausted both mentally and physically. When morning came, I got up, got ready and was going out to hand out resumes as I wanted to get out of my job for a few reasons. One was due to lack of scheduled hours, how I was treated sometimes etc. Well, before I left my brother's home, was living with him here when I worked and back at mom's and our stepdad's home in the country when I didn't work because I lost my apartment. That is another story. I was asked if I could come into work for a shift. I declined because I wanted to do this when I could. Plus, I didn't think I could mentally handle too many people after the night before. After that, I went out to hand out resumes to places where I knew they were hiring. As I did, I saw at a McDonald's and frowned. So, I texted her if she was still mad at me and left it at that. After that, I started to bike past a Tim Hortons to make my way to a pet store. Love animals, helped with an animal rescue for years. Well, there was a big line in the drive-thru and as I'm biking past, a car is coming out and we didn't see each other due to a truck that was in the line. It had one of those big dome things on the truck bed so we didn't see each other. Thankfully, he wasn't going fast or anything when leaving but well, he hit the back tire of my bike which knocked me down. I fell on the ground, landing on my left arm and my leg was caught in the frame of the bike. While I'm on the ground, I'm just kind of blinking going like what the fuck just happened? Though, I just kind of laugh, as that is one of my coping mechanisms with pain. Or at least with what little pain I was feeling at the time. People came out to check up on me to make sure I was okay. I was. I just asked if someone could get my bike off of me so I could try to get up. They do, so I try to move as I didn't feel anything in my back that would indicate pain or anything like that. I've fallen on my shoulder before from riding my bike, going faster than I was, and only hurt my shoulder a bit. Though, as I tried to push myself up, I fell back down. I'm just like what the hell? I look up at those around me and asked if I could have help. My arm couldn't support my weight. I get help up, moved over so I'm no longer impeding traffic, which I didn't mind. I didn't want to block anyone anyway. Anyway, an ambulance is called for me. I'm just sitting and relaxing, and with how I couldn't move my arm from its bent position I'm thinking I think I broke my arm. The guy is apologizing over and over again for hitting me and I'm just like it's okay, we didn't see each other. A worker came out and asked if I was okay and I said yeah. I'm just waiting for an ambulance at that point, then they asked me for my information since I was hurt on their property. So I'm thinking, fair, and do so. Then they asked me if I wanted them to hold on to my bike for me and I asked if it isn't too much trouble. I'll ask my uncle to come get it for me. They take my bike for me and put it where it would be safe. Well, I get taken to the hospital after that, well after I spoke to the police as well since where I live you can't bike on the sidewalk with tires the size I had. So, that was fun. Anyway, once I get to the hospital, I'm in the waiting room debating on calling my mom or not. Pros, she won't kick my ass, cons, she'll kick my ass. So, I called and asked my mom if she was still visiting my brother. She was and asked why. I still remember the convo. Hey mom, you still in town? Yeah, why? I'm at the hospital. What? Why? I was hit by a car. How did you get there? Ambulance. I'm on my way. So, after being in the waiting room for hours, among hours, I think I got there around noon? 1? I got out after 6 and didn't have my pain meds yet. Went to my job to let them know I'll have to be off for a bit till I get my cast, had broken both bones in my left elbow. So, once that was done, we went to my brother's place just to rest for a bit and that was when I got a reply back from my friend. M texted that she was still mad at me for hiding that I knew about my friend breaking up with her beforehand. I don't remember all of what she texted, but I had asked her if she could chew me out later, that I was hit by a car and broke my arm. Well, she just kept going on and on. I'm getting fed up, glare at my phone and send this. It's not verbatim, but it's close. Look, I get that you're mad at me, but I was hit by a fucking car, just got out of the hospital after being in there for longer than 5 hours, and I don't have anything for my fucking pain. Just bitch at me later, damn it. After that I shut my phone off, I think, and just relaxed. Got my meds filled out and then went to my parents' place in the country. Though, while I was off work, my friend was bitching about me to coworkers both inside and outside of work. Even to the bus driver, who knew my mom, aunt, and uncle as her own kid used to play with them when they were kids. The bus driver told her to shut the fuck up. I only found that out because a coworker who I've known since I started let me know. Telling me that she had even asked our manager to keep an eye out for her because of what she was saying. Such as calling me a bitch and the like. After my first shift back, she pretty much ignored me, which I didn't mind. I was still in pain and the cast I had was pretty heavy as it went from my hand, past my elbow up my bicep. When my shift was done and I was in the car with my mom and heading back home, Em called me and started to go on a spiel. I can't remember it, but just her saying that she was upset and that I should have said something. I had her on speakerphone so Mom heard everything and got fed up. Mom told her off, saying that it wasn't my business to tell her in the first place. Plus, it was most likely that she wouldn't have believed me anyway. Also that she knows that she was talking shit about me behind my back to coworkers and anyone that she could who wasn't even involved in our problems. Then said that if she did anything to my cat, that there would be hell to pay. She was looking after my cat for me because my stepdad was allergic to cats, and he was kind of in the mindset that animals didn't belong inside the house. He was a farmer, so that was how he was raised. After I got home, Em texted me saying how could I think that she would hurt my cat, among other things. Then, she said if I didn't get my cat that weekend, she was putting her in the shelter. Of course, I'm freaking out and panicking to the point of going into a panic attack. I found my cat. I've had her since 2014 and she is pretty much my child, and still is. So, I'm calling my friend, Jay, begging him to get my cat for me because of what I told. He said that he'd get her for me and not to worry. I thank him for it and trying to calm down. Though, she had also called the cops on my mom because, I won't lie, Mom did kind of threaten her. It was only because when I called her, with Mom's phone as I was paying for minutes and was low, I don't remember again what was said, I was in hysterics I think by that point. Mom threatened her that if anything happened to my cat, she would find a way into the apartment building, that she knows people there, and would rip her face off and glue it to the cheek of her ass. Yeah, cops got called. But, when Mom explained everything, he didn't give a warning, understood and said that if any other call was made to us then to let him know. Even asked later if I got my cat to a safe location, which I did. Though Em told Jay that I owed her $10 because of my cat's water dish as per agreement. Which, I said I'd pay only if her power bill went up, as the cat's water dish was electric. When I found that out, I went to him and gave him $20 for the 10 he lost, but also for picking up my cat. He also loved my cat while looking after her, called her his little copiale as she would lay on his bed when he gamed. After that Mom and I were getting texts from unknown numbers which I knew was her. As she had used an app on her phone before to text me with unknown numbers and the like. Sadly I couldn't prove it was Em since again, the app hid her number by giving a different one. I was getting sickened with those texts, so, when I got a new phone, I changed my number in the process. Mom had also changed her number as well. But wait. There's more. Long after that, I got my cast off, finished physio and was just having a normal shift at work. I was front running, pretty much getting orders on trays or in bags. Well, who walks in? Yup, my Em along with her new friend. They're also not friends anymore. They had a fight that resulted in her wanting to ditch the friend in the country, on the side of the road. At night, Em got punched in the face afterwards for getting in her new friend's face constantly while yelling at her, this happened maybe a couple years later? I don't remember when. Well, she sees me and I don't really say anything to her. I just tray her and her friend's food and say the name and go back to my tasks. When she sits down, she's crying and on the phone with Jay, who only really talked to her when he wanted rides to get smokes. He wouldn't touch her with a 10-foot pole, haha. Anyway, she's crying that I was giving her a dirty and angry look. She was glaring at me and I don't know why. His answer? Well, you were talking shit about her behind her back and threatened to put her cat in a shelter months after she was backstabbed by her friend from high school as she lost her apartment. She could only say, oh. Right. Yeah, and another thing? The friend, see that while I had been backstabbed, he did apologize, got his life back together and we're kind of talking again while he told me something interesting. Turns out, M had been thinking of putting my cat in a shelter for a little while before our fight. When he heard that, he just said I may not be talking to OP or like her right now, but I won't stand by or be near someone who would do that to someone that is supposed to be their friend. Also, my friend Jay had told me that M had been jealous of our relationship. Despite the fact that Jay and I were like siblings, known each other since high school and we had no romantic feelings toward the other. But she was trying to ruin our relationship through means that I don't know or remember at this point. Years after that, she messaged Jay and asked him if he'd ask me if I would ever meet with her so she could apologize to me. He felt bad for even asking me that, thinking he betrayed me in some way. I said just told him, dude, it would have only been betraying me if you gave her my new number. Which he thought it over and agreed with me on that. Never met with them, I'm just thinking nope, you threatened my cat, talked shit about me at work, told your friend that I was the reason why you lost your job. Fuck that, you can feel guilt for it for all I care. Yeah, she quit working because I told the GM what was happening. She took away M shifts, but what I said was just the final straw. Because she was always calling in, always complaining about being sore while working, always wanting to go home ECT. Even when she had a broken arm, I could get she didn't want to work, but still. I worked with my arm in a cast, for my left arm when I'm left-handed, and I still worked. I didn't complain to go home, didn't whine about pain or nothing. Just came up with ways/methods to get through the shift till I could get home. So yeah, the GM took away her shifts, which made her quit. I wasn't the main reason, but just the straw that broke the camel's back. Bye and see you again in the next videos and stories.